My ex mocked me at a party, told everyone I still worked retail. You should see the uniform, she laughed. So I let her finish her speech, then rolled the new car into the driveway, the one her dad helped me pick out. My name's Jake, I'm 27, and until that night, people like Sophie thought I'd never amount to anything. Especially Sophie herself, my ex. She used to say things like, ambition is sexy, while scrolling through job listings for me. We were together for almost 4 years, but when I didn't fit her image of success fast enough, she left. For a guy named Travis who wore cufflinks and posted quotes from Shark Tank on Instagram. But this isn't about Travis. It's about the night she tried to humiliate me in front of everyone and accidentally introduced me as the man who'd played her entire game better than she ever realized. The party was at her dad's house. You read that right. Her dad invited me. Not her. That's important. It was one of those summer evenings where the air feels expensive. People drinking by the pool, someone grilling overpriced steaks, acoustic guitar music in the background. The kind of party where old friends get nostalgic and newer ones get drunk too fast. And in the middle of it all, Sophie, on a little platform by the deck, holding a glass of wine and everyone's attention. I was standing near the edge of the yard, drink in hand, chatting with her dad about engine specs. Nothing dramatic. We weren't exactly friends, but he always respected hustle, and I guess somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembered the version of me Sophie left behind. The one who worked backroom shifts and fell asleep designing an app on his cracked laptop. The version she thought was stuck. She spotted me halfway through a story and immediately adjusted her tone. Oh, she said, turning to the group. You guys remember Jake, right? Her voice had this sticky sweet venom to it. Still working retail? Same store too. You should see the uniform. She chuckled. It's adorable. A few of the guys laughed. Some winced. Sophie held court like she always did. Confident, sharp, a little cruel. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. I just took a slow sip of my drink and said nothing. Not yet. Because here's the part she didn't know. Yes, I worked retail. For almost 6 years. But I wasn't just stocking shelves. I was studying patterns. Shipment cycles. Vendor behavior. Repeat purchases. What started as boredom became data and eventually turned into a logistics tool that caught the attention of a mid-sized tech firm. I sold it 5 weeks ago for enough to never touch a register again. No one at the party knew that. Not even her dad. Especially not her. And while she made a show of mocking my adorable job in front of everyone, I just waited. Because parked 2 streets over, under the soft buzz of a street lamp, was a brand new car. One I'd spent months researching. One I'd test-driven with her father. He'd thought I was upgrading to reward myself for staying afloat. He didn't know I was planning this. I waited until her toast was nearly over. Until the attention reached its peak. Until the silence between her sentences became a net I could walk straight through. And then I looked at her dad. Mind if I grab something from the car? I asked. He blinked. You parked far. I nodded toward the street. Wasn't sure I was even invited. He gave a light chuckle. Of course you were. I slipped away. When I turned the corner and clicked the remote, the headlights blinked like a wink. I pulled forward slow, the engine quiet. Almost like a hum under the sound of Sophie's voice drifting through the air. By the time I rolled into the driveway, the music had stopped. People were turning. She stopped mid-sentence, wine glass halfway up. And I stepped out. Quietly. No theatrics. No smug grin. Just enough eye contact for her to know. I had heard everything. And now it was my turn to speak. You want to know the funny part? Sophie used to call me her safe bet. I remember it word for word. She was sitting on the kitchen counter, swinging her legs, wearing one of my old sweatshirts, grinning like it was a compliment. You're reliable, she said. Like, you're not flashy, but you'll always have a job. You're safe. A guy I could settle down with if things don't blow up. If things don't blow up. That was the phrase that stuck. Even more than the breakup. Because what she really meant was, you're my backup plan if the fireworks fail. We dated from when I was 21 until right before I turned 26. College sweethearts, if you can call it that. She was in pre-law, and I was juggling part-time school with full-time shifts at a retail chain. Not glamorous, but steady. I wasn't trying to climb the corporate ladder. I was trying to build something real. Something mine. Sophie didn't get that. She didn't like my beat-up laptop. She didn't like that I'd come home tired. She didn't like that being frugal didn't look like dinners at steakhouses and weekend cabin getaways. What she did like? Posting couple selfies with captions like, power couple in the making. Until she realized I wasn't rising fast enough to match the caption. So one day, she sat me down. Said we were going in different directions. Said she wanted someone more aligned with her goals. Said she still loved me, but didn't see the vision anymore. Vision. That's rich, considering she ran straight into Travis's arms less than 2 weeks later. Travis, with his apartment that smelled like expensive candles and his investment portfolio he never shut up about. The guy wore a blazer to brunch and corrected waiters on wine pairings. Sophie was so proud of him. Told our friends she'd finally met a man who knows what he wants. Meanwhile, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment where the walls were thin and the shower pressure felt like mist. Still working retail. Still pouring every spare hour into a side project that nobody but me believed in. Until someone did. A guy I'd never met before reached out on LinkedIn after reading a blog post I'd published about inventory flow disruption. Said he liked my data logic. Said he'd be in town and wanted to talk. We met. I showed him the beta. He introduced me to 2 people. 3 weeks later, I was building out a full prototype with a developer who used to work for a Fortune 500 logistics firm. It snowballed. Quietly. And I kept my head down. Didn't post about it. Didn't even tell my closest friends. I wanted the work to speak louder than anything I could say. While Sophie was uploading pictures of her wine tastings and designer heels, I was debugging shipment tracking glitches and negotiating pre-seed funding. By the time I sold the software, it wasn't just an app. It was a full back-end solution that streamlined inventory communication between suppliers, warehouses, and retail stores. It was boring, unsexy, but incredibly valuable. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to show Sophie what I'd become. But then her dad texted. It was casual. He wanted to know if I was still around. Said he was throwing a summer party, and it'd be good to see an old face or two. No mention of Sophie. No warning she'd be there. Just an address, a time, and a little winking smiley at the end. That was the moment the idea hit me. She'd once told me I'd never stand out. Never feel like the man she wanted. So I decided I wouldn't say a word. Wouldn't show off. I'd just show up. And let her figure it out. That's why I went to her dad's favorite dealership. Told him I was looking for something understated, but hard to forget. We test drove a few models, landed on one. Matte black. Subtle, sleek. Something that hummed when it moved, instead of roaring. He didn't ask too many questions, just patted my shoulder when we signed the paperwork. Now you understand why I stood still when she mocked me. Why I smiled instead of snapped. Because she didn't know what I knew. Didn't know who helped me pick out the keys. Didn't know that while she was laughing, her future was shrinking. And mine was already parked just around the corner. When I stepped back into the party from the side path, the air had shifted. Sophie was still standing by the deck, riding high on the wave of her own attention. Her laugh cut through the soft music like a wine glass tapping too hard. A few people had caught on to the awkwardness. Maybe they noticed me walking away. Maybe they saw the look on her dad's face when I did. But most were too busy sipping cocktails and laughing at stories they didn't even understand. I made my way over to her father. He was chatting with a guy in a golf hat, talking about boat maintenance. Hey, I said, keeping it casual. Mind if I go grab something real quick? He raised an eyebrow. You parked on the street? Couple blocks down. Didn't know how full the driveway would be. He nodded, handing me a napkin with a little grease stain on it. You're good. Just don't get lost. As I walked, I could feel the tension in my chest. Not nerves, not fear. Anticipation. Years of swallowing pride don't just disappear, but that night, I felt something else building. Like the truth was about to stretch its legs after being crammed in a closet too long. I turned the corner, clicked the key fob, and the headlights blinked to life. It wasn't just any car. It was a 2024 Porsche Panamera, matte black, custom rims, red-stitched leather interior. Not flashy on the surface, but a masterpiece when you look twice. The kind of car you don't show off, you just let people notice. The kind Sophie once said, you'd never pull off. Funny thing is, I hadn't even told her dad I'd bought it. When we test drove it, I made it sound like I was just looking around after getting a raise. He assumed I was still trying to crawl out of the retail world. Maybe I let him believe that. Maybe I just wanted the truth to arrive when it needed to, not a second earlier. As the engine started and I turned slowly onto the street leading back to the house, I heard her voice floating into the air again. I mean, come on. A barcode scanner? That's not a career, it's a part-time gig with a name tag. Laughter. You know what I realized after dating him? She continued. You can't fix potential. If they don't have drive, they'll just stay stuck. Some people are just fine with being average. That's when I pulled up, right into the center of the driveway. I cut the engine, stepped out, and closed the door with a soft click. And the entire yard went still. No music, no chatter, just 30 faces turning toward the car, and then to me. I looked at Sophie. She was frozen, like she was trying to blink the scene into something that made sense. I didn't say anything dramatic. No mic drop line. No insult. I just turned to her dad and said, hope the steering's still good. It's been a week since the test drive. He squinted at the car, then back at me. You actually bought it? He asked, voice low. I nodded. Last month. Just kept it quiet. Sophie's eyes darted between us. Wait, you too? He helped me figure out the trim package, I said. Now people were whispering. The same folks who laughed 5 minutes ago were squinting at the emblem. Someone near the grill said, That's at least what? 100 grand. Travis, standing a few feet behind Sophie with a solo cup in hand, tried to smirk it off. Cool rental. I looked him in the eye. You wish. Her dad took a step forward and ran his hand along the side mirror, inspecting it like he suddenly realized he was part of something bigger than expected. You didn't say you were doing this well, he said. I didn't need to, I replied. She already had it figured out, right? Sophie's face flushed. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't wait for her to recover. I just walked back toward the crowd, back to where I had been standing before she made a performance out of mocking me. Picked up my drink, took one last look at the party, and waited for what always comes next. The panic. The silence didn't last long. You know how people get when something disrupts the natural order of a room? They scramble for explanations, excuses, a way to go back to the moment before the thing happened. That's what happened next. After I rolled up in the Porsche and casually mentioned Sophie's dad had helped me test drive it, the air went thick. The kind of thick you can't cut through with small talk. People sipped their drinks harder. Phones came out, quietly. Sophie was standing in the middle of the deck like someone had pulled the floor out from under her, but she hadn't fallen yet. She tried to pivot. She laughed, too loud. Wow, Jake. This whole thing's a bit dramatic, don't you think? I didn't answer. That's what hit hardest. Travis was behind her, whispering something like, who is this guy? But she ignored him. Her dad gave me a slow nod. Not approval. Not pride. Just understanding. I think it hit him right then, too. That maybe I hadn't needed Sophie's belief to make something of myself. That maybe, despite her mockery and assumptions, I was never the one falling behind. Sophie walked down the deck steps like she was on autopilot, wine glass still in hand, designer heels clicking down her father's pavers. She reached me just as I was heading back toward the car. Jake, wait, she said. Her voice was lighter now, the kind of tone you use when you're trying not to sound like you're chasing. I turned. She smiled, tight, forced. I didn't mean it like that. The jokes. It was just banter. I looked at her, but didn't move. You look good, she said. I mean this, she gestured to the car. It's impressive. I could have lit her up right there. I could have listed every time she told me I wasn't enough, every time she rolled her eyes when I stayed up late coding, every time she said, you should just be realistic. But what would be the point? Instead, I said, you said some people are just fine being average. But the truth is, some people just don't advertise what they're building. She blinked, then tried to recover. I was young. I didn't know what I wanted. You knew what you didn't want, I said, stepping back. That was the part you were very clear about. Her face flickered, something between regret and panic. The kind of look that says, I miscalculated. Are you seeing anyone? She asked, voice barely above the music. That's when I realized this wasn't just about embarrassment. She wasn't chasing me to save face in front of the crowd. She was chasing the version of me she thought would still be waiting. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, then down at the car. You said ambition was sexy, I said. But you never knew what it actually looked like. You thought it wore suits and talked about crypto. Turns out, it wears hoodies and keeps receipts. Then I opened the door and got in. As I started the engine, she reached out, one hand on the window. Jake, wait. Her voice cracked. I just didn't think. I know, I said. That's the problem. I didn't floor it. I didn't blast the music or flip her off. I just pulled out slowly, letting the sound of the engine roll behind me like a wave. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw her standing there, alone, and behind her, 30 people who'd just watched the power dynamic flip like a coin midair. No speeches, no applause, just a woman realizing she'd mocked the man who outgrew her in front of everyone. And me, driving away, no longer needing to explain anything. I had barely made it to the end of the driveway when I heard the voice behind me. Jake, hold up. It was her dad, Richard. Calm, steady voice. The kind of man who didn't say much unless he meant it. I tapped the brakes and looked in the mirror. He jogged down the drive, waving one hand, dressed in that same pressed white polo he always wore to family events like it was a uniform of his own. I put the car in park. He leaned into the open window, hands resting on the frame. You planning to disappear for another 2 years? He asked. I gave him a look. Didn't think anyone noticed I was gone. Oh, I noticed, he said, glancing back at the house. So did she. She just pretended not to. I waited. He didn't come to pat me on the back. He wasn't the sentimental type. Then he said, she's not who you were building that life for, was she? That stopped me. I looked him in the eye. Not anymore. He gave the faintest nod. Good. Silence stretched between us for a moment. Then he leaned in a little closer and said, low enough that no one on the lawn could hear. I didn't invite you tonight to embarrass her. I invited you so you could see she hasn't changed. Not really. You're not upset? He chuckled once dry. I'm a father, Jake. Not blind. I know when my daughter's performing. She's good at pretending she's on top of the world. But deep down, she knows what she lost. I swallowed that down. I wasn't expecting that kind of honesty. Not from him. You've done something with yourself, he said. And the best part is, you didn't make noise doing it. I let that sit for a second. It wasn't about revenge. I know, he said. That's why it worked. Then he pulled something out of his back pocket, a folded slip of paper. I raised an eyebrow. It's nothing major, he said. Just the name of a guy I know in real estate. You ever want to invest that money in something a little more permanent? Give him a call. I stared at the paper for a beat. You're giving me investment advice at your daughter's party? I'm giving it to someone I respect, he said, standing up. Besides, I'm not sure she deserves the whole night anyway. He stepped back, gave me one last look, and added, You know what ambition really looks like? It looks like you didn't need her to get here. That's what'll eat at her more than anything else. With that, he turned and walked back toward the house, not looking back once. And I sat there, hands on the wheel, feeling that strange mixture of clarity and closure wash over me. It wasn't just about the car. It was about the fact that the man who once called me a decent guy with no direction had just handed me a business lead at his own daughter's going down in flames party. And not out of pity, out of respect. There's something quietly powerful about that. I didn't peel out, didn't make a scene, just pulled back onto the road and left the lights behind. Back at the house, Sophie was probably still standing in the same spot, surrounded by people who were now seeing her a little differently. Not because I proved her wrong with a flashy moment, but because she reminded everyone exactly how cruel she could be, at the exact moment she was the least entitled to laugh. And now, she had to sit with it. That party would keep happening. The drinks would keep pouring. But the night? The night belonged to the man she thought she left behind. I was halfway home when my phone buzzed for the first time. Then again, and again, until it was just a constant flicker of notifications. 17 messages. All from Sophie. I didn't stop driving. It was almost comical. Barely an hour ago, she was standing in a cocktail dress, surrounded by friends, mocking my adorable uniform. Now she was alone, staring at red receipts and wondering how the guy she left behind had somehow ended up being the one who walked away from her. When I got home, I didn't rush to read them. I poured a drink, turned on the kitchen light, took off my shoes, let the silence stretch out. Eventually, I picked up the phone and opened just one. It said, I didn't know you were doing so well. Why didn't you ever tell me? That was it. No apology. No ownership. No acknowledgement of what she'd said, what she'd done. Just confusion. Like she expected me to explain myself, to justify my success. That was all I needed to see. I locked my phone and left the rest unread. Because here's what people like Sophie never understand. Silence isn't weakness. It's control. She'd spent years shaping her image, talking herself up, laughing at anyone who didn't fit the mold she thought success was supposed to wear. And in one evening, all of that crumbled, without me ever raising my voice. I thought I'd feel triumphant. But honestly, I just felt free. The weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying for years, it was gone. I'd been measuring myself against her voice in my head. Her judgment. Her barbs dressed as jokes. For so long, I thought I needed to prove something to her. Turns out, I only needed to prove it to myself. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls. Then one more text. Can we talk? Just for a second? Please. I didn't answer. I took a walk instead. Breathed in the morning air. Walked past a row of shops I used to stock shelves for. Noticed one of them had my app's backend system running. Something small, like a blinking indicator in the corner of their register. It made me smile. I built that. Not for her. Not to spite her. Just because I could. Later that day, I made a call to the real estate contact her dad gave me. Not for a mansion or something flashy. Just a small building in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Something I could turn into a studio or an incubator. A space to build more. The future felt quiet. Uncomplicated. No performances. No begging for approval. Just work. Just peace. And Sophie? Well, she went quiet after a few days. I think she finally realized there was no getting back into my life. No soft reset. No flirty, remember when? Message that would land anymore. Because the truth is, once someone shows you who they are when they think you're beneath them, there's no going back. She saw me as disposable. She laughed when she thought I had nothing. She tried to talk when she realized I had more than she ever imagined. But by then, I had already outgrown her shadow. And I wasn't shrinking back to fit. That night didn't change everything. It just revealed it. She always wanted someone with status. With proof. With a spotlight. What she never realized was, real growth doesn't need an audience. She told everyone I still worked retail. She laughed about my uniform. And while they laughed with her, I handed her father the keys to a car he helped me choose. One she'll now think about every time someone mentions my name. And I never said a single cruel word. Sometimes the cleanest revenge is just the exit. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.